Greetings, hello. Want to welcome you one more time to this episode of Fireside Chats. We got a nice one today. Please, before we get started, go ahead and hit the like button for us. Please comment all of your agreements, disagreements. We want to go ahead and ask that you share this video with a family or a friend. And then also make sure you hit that notification bell when you subscribe, that you be the first to know when we post. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right, bro, check this, man. Holiness. Romans 12:1 says this. There's something that said, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, that ye present your bodies I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercy of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. I just want to go back to that first word, starting with, in that first part of scripture says that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, then holy. Let's define that first.
Well, holy is to be sanctified, clean, different, set apart. But I think the major thing that we make with that verse, or the major issue or major mistake that we make, is we consistently take that verse in and of itself and then completely harp on, like how you were doing this now, where it's like, okay, these 4 words in the verses, and you focus totally on that, whereby you keep going, he actually shows you or tells you how you actually make your body a living sacrifice, what exactly is holiness as far as it pertains to a believer. So in order to really get into that verse, you would have to read everything that's after that. So from that aspect, the verse is actually talking about a service that is connected to holiness, but yet still a service. When you're dealing with a sacrifice was rendering a service unto God. It's basically rendering a service unto God pertaining to the sacrifice. So now he gets into the idea of this service, and then he gets into the idea of holiness. Well, first thing we want to touch is, if you're going to be a servant, or if you're going to serve, then you have to actually be doing something. You have to actually serve. So right after that, he says, therefore, I beseech you, brethren, therefore is, okay, here's the conclusion of everything that I was talking about previously. Now I'm about to tell you what all this is measuring down to. Make your body a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, renew your mind. And then he gets to explaining how you actually do it. And the first thing he explains is the actual rendering of a service, when he gets into, by the grace of God, given unto me, I tell you basically that a measure of faith has been given to all men, and according to that measure of faith, those who prophesy, let them prophesy, teaching, teach, minister, wait on your ministering, so forth, so on. So he's actually talking about the first thing you got to realize in being a living sacrifice. The first thing you need to realize in a renewed mindset is, as a believer, you have to come off this idea of procrastination, this idea of the way that we view just life as far as rendering actions and service. So the first thing he points out is, in order to be a sacrifice, you have to actually serve a purpose, because that's what a sacrifice did. So he makes it very simple. If you teach, go ahead and teach. If you give liberally. Whatever it is you're doing, go do it. Don't wait, just go ahead and do whatever it is that you're called to do or gifted to do. That's the better thing I should say. What you're gifted to do, go ahead and do it. He goes on and he gets into the conduct. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Dissimulation being, let love be sincere. Be sincere about your love towards your brother, to esteem one above another, to let love you without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectionate one to another in honor with brotherly love, preferring others above ourselves, not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. All these things, all those verses after the first two verses in Romans chapter 12 is telling you how you make your body a living sacrifice, how you make it holy and acceptable. That is not only with your actions, but it's also going to be with your conduct, meaning not only I'm teaching, I'm giving, no, your conduct in the way that you love one another, your conduct in the way that you give to one another, your conduct in the way that you see your brother, esteeming your brother above yourself, your conduct pertaining to how you treat authority, because God is a God of authority, or better yet, God is a God of order. He's not a God of confusion. So God is never against authority. It's only us who's against authority. Well, in order for there to be a holy living, you have to come from out of this idea where you want to operate in lawlessness, because that's not going to be over to work. In order for there to be a holy living, the way that you treat your brother is going to be important, because one of the golden rules, or the golden rules sum up, is love your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and to treat your neighbor as yourself. So he's actually telling you, this is the renewed mind. This is the mindset that you have to have. This is the conduct that you have to have. This is how you're supposed to do things if you're going to have a renewed mindset, if you're going to come to the understanding of God's perfect will, if you're going to be a servant that actually serves. This is what is required.
Well, and that you did an excellent job of explaining it, but let me get to the reason why I asked this question. Because it's been taught that mainly on that second part of the verse is that when it says the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So that it's been explained and it's been taught, and I've heard this on several occasions, that there's a perfect will of God, there's the acceptable will of God, and there's this permissive will, like certain things He will allow.
Mm-hmm.
So if yet here on Fireside Chats we talk about who, what, when, where, and why, that's why I was asking to bring some type of clarity to that.
Okay, the acceptable will of God would be when we deal with our liberties. Mm-hmm. Where we talk about the idea of, and he actually gets into that chapter later, going into chapter 14, where he gets to talking about liberties. This is that acceptable will of God, where here, yeah, you allowed to eat this, yeah, you allowed to drink that. Means I accept it, that's cool, that's fine. Now this is not a commandment, but it's all right and it's allowed for you to do, so I accept it, there'd be no problem with it, you're not doing anything wrong. Perfect will of God deals with actual commandments. We think this idea, when we think of perfect will of God, is that my life is perfectly in line with God. Every breath I take is on point with God. Every time I speak, it's exactly what God would say, and that's not what he's talking about. The perfect will of God is, what did God actually command? What's the difference between a liberty? What's the difference between a commandment? And what's the difference between your ability to choose to do something? So that's that good part that we get into. The good part, right? I have somewhat of a gift or an ability to teach the word of God. That was given me, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I chose that, okay, I just really want to find an avenue to share the word of God with people. So I chose to get on YouTube and start doing a channel. Brother Harold helped, you joined in and helped. I cannot say that this channel in and of itself was the will of God. I can say that it was good for God, that's fine, because I told you, if you're going to teach, get the teaching. If you're going to give, get the giving. Now, that's the good will of God. Now, since God has now been pleased in this avenue or with this, now I have to be mindful of how I'm using the good will of God as far as using this channel and what I do with this channel, because then I can get into some situations. The good will of God is broken down basically like this. You have an idea. The first question is this something that is clearly against the commandments of God? No. Then God's okay with you making the choice to go ahead and do whatever it is that you're going to do. That's what it's basically saying in the next 4, 5, and 6 verse of chapter 12. Like, if you teach, go ahead and teach. If you do this, go ahead and do it. God has no problem with you exercising gifts or choosing avenues in which to exercise gifts as long as they're not against his commandments. The acceptable will of God deals with those liberties. The perfect will of God is his actual commandments, things he said don't do or things he said that you need to do. That's the perfect will of God that they're actually talking about right there.
Well, I don't have no more to add to that. That cleared that up.
Thanks again one more time for tuning in here on Fireside Chats. We want to go ahead and ask that you hit that like button. Go ahead and comment. All your agreements, disagreements, please don't text us, don't call us. Be sure to share and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. And we'll see you one more time on another episode of Fireside Chats.